Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Eurasian Forum is very much focused on, obviously, Eurasia and Europe, of course. I think that we shall talk about the Russian economy for long years at the forum, and October is a very good opportunity to talk about new prospects. Why is that? Well, because it is in October that when in Russia the budget law is approved, and now we have a 3-year plan for our budget law. The budget law used to be debated in spring, but now all takes place later on, and the first drafts of the budget law are usually debated later during the year. So everything happens in October. So as from next week, we're going to start and finalize it, and then the document is going to be tabled to the Duma, to the lower chamber of parliament. Now, here are my slides. Let me highlight that the critical elements of the Russian economy are not the consequences of the drop in oil prices or the sanctions. Indeed, since 2012, we saw that the dynamics of the main economic parameters dropped and declined, so much so that many important parameters started again dwindling, as for example, own capital. And many other parameters, again, were all dwindling. The Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs monitors the business structure on a regular basis, and ever since 2012, our surveys detected a similar trend. Now, as for short-term forecasts, well, there is moderate optimism. Just this week, our government has published its forecast for the next few years, and official forecasts refer to a growth by 0.06. In 2018, it's going to be 1.5, and in 2019, slightly more than 2%. So we might say that we are pretty much in line with Europe, but the ambitions of Russians in a way state us that we are halfway through between Germany and China. We can outdo Germany, but we are still too slow vis-a-vis China. Now, with reference to the Russian business community, well, of course, we cannot but be concerned for the lack of foreseeability of the economic policy of our authority. Just 2 years ago, President Putin had promised the business community not to increase tax rates, but whenever the budget law is being debated in the parliament, they're always mentioning the possibility to increase rates. And now this year, they wanted to increase VAT from 18 to 20% and to have a progressive tax rate on the personal income tax. Insurance premiums are also on the increase. So this obviously corresponds to growing taxes, but the government decided not to increase taxes. The government decided to have a different tax policy. I wish to highlight then that year on year, we are always very uncertain as to what happens with our tax policy. And the geopolitical situation is extremely confused. The market situation globally is very confused, which obviously adds on to our uncertainty with negative impact on our medium to long-term plans. Now, talking about the outstanding issues, I have to also refer to the losses of the business community, which are pretty high. And this is due also to the interest rates. Earlier on, high interest rates were offset by low interest rate on foreign financing, and many Russian corporations in retrofitting their technology project would involve also foreign investments using, for example, foreign investment with loans coming from outside. This obviously is over. The average tax on loans for small to medium-sized enterprises is of about 15%, and based on the result of last year, despite the fact that inflation is going down. And this is going to be a record low inflation this year, 5.78, which is a record low in terms of inflation for us. And next year and for the following 3 years, it should be around 4%. The interest rate is still a double digit. It's going to be double digit, i.e. around 10%. And we expect that interest rates will be connected again to the inflation rate. What is the problem for the business community? Well, we probably feel the need for middle management. This is an ongoing problem. Also, in the past, we went through very critical years. And we saw that the lack of middle managers brings about a delay in the retrofitting of the company. The Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs are working together to draft professional standards listing certain or a checklist of certain requirements for our managers. And as from January 1st, a new law will be passed on independent expert opinion. So we talked about the tax burden, which is still a problem, and the tariffs of monopolies. This is another outstanding problem. Apparently, for the next 5 years, the monopoly tariffs will follow the law of inflation minus, but we don't understand, we still haven't decided as a minus what, minus 25%. This is our forecast. Now, referring to the main drivers of economic growth and this time of complex economic crisis, I would like to refer to President Putin's statement. He said that the main driver is that of economic freedom. So we expect an enhancement of the entrepreneurial climate. So together with the government, we have to work on universal methods so as to grant support to entrepreneurs. And so there are many constraints under which we have to operate, but we see a dramatic change. And this is something that we have to expect and have to bear fruit long term. This month we shall work at the Council of State meeting for the enhancement of the business environment in the different areas of the Russian Federation. And there, not only will we talk about the drafting of the new laws, and we're going to talk also about the setting up of new task force to carry out this work. Now, let me spend just a few comments on our international commitments. There are negative factors affecting our business. For example, as for the customs duty, we rank 15 worldwide. But in the framework of the Eurasian Economic Community and at different fora, such as the G20, well, Russia within these fora is ready to be active soon, especially to implement the 3 facilitation agreements that was signed 3 years ago. This is the official stance of our government, in a way. Our government wishes to use our internal laws, especially within the standards of the OECD. Despite our involvement of being frozen, Russian standards will be based on international standards to a large extent. And having said as much, I think that my presentation is over, but I have a question that I would like to raise immediately, if I may. Well, first of all, I'd like to tell everybody that the floor is open for Q&A time as soon as the presentation is over. Obviously, you have to get a hold of a microphone before you voice your question. Obviously, other questions can be raised also at the end of the session, but if you have specific questions for individual speakers, you're all invited to raise your questions as soon as the presentation is over. So now, going back to my question, I would like to know what you think as a delegate of an important organization gathering together many large-sized companies in Russia, and I believe that this is going to be of interest also for our Italian friends. So as a matter of fact, we are trying to curb inflation so as to reach record low levels for Russia. But don't you think that this is going also to bring about a reduction in the demand? Because, of course, we also have to consider the needs of our internal population. So certainly we're never going to reach a 0 level of inflation, certainly as far as we are alive at least, but a low inflation year on year. And I'd like to remind you the figures that the central bank and the government is going to have for the next few years, a level of some 4% of our inflation. Well, that is a record low, but that doesn't mean that demand will be curbed. Indeed, the demand can still be alive and kicking. And with constantly and consistently low inflation, we can also reduce interest rates. Interest rates, therefore, can be reduced to 5–6%, which will enable Russian corporations to make important investments, especially with reference to the short to medium-term plans. So I believe that inflation ranging between 3.5% and 4% is going to make this possible. So is there no risk of the reduction of the demand? Do you think that the demand is going to be balanced? Well, I believe that demand in Russia is certainly a very severe problem, is a severe issue, a serious issue, and this is indeed one of the main hindrances to economic development or growth. The lack of demand coming from outside, considering that, again, we only have to consider our energy requirements. I hope that the Nord Stream 2 project is not going to be blocked. There's a desire of Europe to discontinue the supply coming from Russia, but this is something that we can perceive strong, but we cannot rely basically on the demand as coming from Europe. So we cannot expect an increase in our demand. And we know that also the growth of worldwide is certainly very limited at the present point in time. So we're trying to promote credit to consumption. But I believe that the demand is going to be kept at a reasonable level because of, or thanks to the curbing of the inflation rate. Well, the demand might be curbed, but there is also a counter trend in that there are many factors pointing to the increase or the strengthening of demand. Thank you.